My mom walked out of my baby shower when the gender reveal turned out to be a girl. She said she'd only come back when I gave her a real grandchild. She'd invited 70 people to the country club, hired photographers, ordered custom decorations. She kept insisting this would be the event of the year once everyone learned about her grandson. Alina was absolutely convinced the baby was a boy. She even bought blue decorations, just in case, told all her church friends to get ready for a little man, and embroidered a blanket that said Junior Jack, and I didn't actually know the gender. The doctor wrote it down, sealed it in an envelope, and we handed it straight to the baker. Alina tried to steam that envelope open twice before I caught her. "I just want to be prepared," she said. "That's what the reveal is for," I reminded her. She decorated the country club with yellows and greens, neutral. But I saw a box of blue streamers in her car, ready to explode the moment she got her confirmation. The shower started beautifully. Guests everywhere, gifts stacked, and my 2-year-old Lucy running around in her big sister dress. Alina kept lifting her up and saying, "You'll have a baby brother to protect you." "If it's a girl?" Jack asked. "Be ridiculous," Alina said. I prayed for a boy. Then came the cake moment. Alina shoved herself to the front, phone ready, practically trembling with excitement. "Everyone, this is history, the first grandson." Jack and I cut the cake together. Bright pink filling poured out. Perfect, unmistakable pink. The room cheered. "Another girl, how wonderful," but Alina just stared at the cake like it had personally attacked her. "There has to be a mistake," she said. "Cut another piece." We cut again. "Still pink, the baker messed it up." She insisted. "No, Alina," I said. "It's a girl." She slowly put down her phone, grabbed her purse, and headed to the door. "Mom, where are you going?" Jack called. "I need air." "Mom, the party just started. We haven't even opened gifts." Not feeling well, she turned at the door, the whole room watching. "This is false advertising," she said. "I planned this shower for my real grandchild, not another girl." "Another girl," I repeated. "Lucy is your grandchild. This baby is your grandchild. You know what I mean, one that carries the family name. This," she pointed at the pink cake, "is just redundancy." My grandmother stood up. "Alina, you're being ridiculous." "Being practical," she snapped. "Girls just grow up, get married, and join someone else's family. Boys stay. Boys matter." "That's enough," Jack said. "If you're going to leave, then go. Call me when you have something worth celebrating." And she walked out. Silence hung for a moment until my sister Amy said loudly, "Good. More cake for the people who actually love this baby." The party went on, honestly, smoother without her. People shared stories about sisters, about raising daughters, about strong women. Lucy smeared pink frosting all over her face. Helen, Jack's aunt, made a small speech about how Alina seemed to forget she was one of 3 girls. "Our mother loved us just fine," she said. "Shame Alina can't do the same." Alina didn't call for a week. When she finally did, her first question was whether we'd try again for a boy. "I'm still pregnant with this one," I said. "I mean after. You're young, you can have more attempts." "Attempts? These are children, not scratch-off tickets. You know what I mean, chances for a boy. Having 2 daughters, that's our family. That's Jack's failure. You realize the man determines the gender. It's not a failure, it's science." "It's disappointment," she said. "I'll never have a grandson." "Then maybe you'll never see your granddaughters." Being dramatic, "I'll see them on holidays." "Not if you call them disappointments." She hung up. Then she told everyone I was keeping her grandchildren from her, but Helen shut that down quickly. She walked out of a baby shower because of pink cake, Helen told everyone. What grandmother does that? 2 months later, we welcomed our daughter, Rose, perfect, tiny, and pink. Everything Alina claimed wasn't worth celebrating. Lena sent a card. "No gift, no money, just this. I am changing my will. Both girls are removed as beneficiaries." The note sat on my counter for 2 days because I didn't know whether to shred it or file it. That night my phone rang nonstop. My mom, Octavia, furious, saying she'd never seen such cruelty. Then my grandmother Caroline, who didn't even ask what the note said. She just called Alina, that ungrateful woman. Over and over the next morning came more calls. Aunt Helen, Amy, cousins who'd been at the shower. Everyone wanted to know if the will thing was real. I kept reading Alina's exact words until they stopped sounding like words. Jack spent days trying to call his mother. I'd hear him in the other room, phone ringing and ringing, no answer. On the 3rd day, her phone finally connected, but it was Sebastian, Jack's dad. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard Jack's tone shift, tired at first and then suddenly furious. Sebastian told him Alina was too upset to talk, that she needed time to process her disappointment. Jack's whole face flushed red, and he hung up without even saying goodbye, something he had never done to his father. He tossed his phone onto the couch and stepped outside, standing in the yard with both hands on his head as if he was trying to keep himself from falling apart. Meanwhile, Lucy kept asking where Grandma Alina had gone. She'd waddle up to me with that confused little face and ask why Gamma left the party so fast, why she didn't say goodbye when she was coming back. I tried telling her Grandma felt sick and went home early, but Lucy just looked at me with those sharp 2-year-old eyes and said very clearly, "Gamma mad about baby sister." My heart cracked right in the middle of the living room. Even a toddler understood what her grandmother had done, walked out because the baby wasn't a boy. I scooped her up and held her tight, trying to think of something honest to say that wouldn't hurt her. Jack eventually came back inside and distracted her with snacks and a cartoon. But later that night, after she went to sleep, he sat on the edge of our bed and cried a full week after the shower. Alina finally called Jack. I was folding laundry when he answered, and I could hear her voice even though it wasn't on speaker. She didn't apologize or ask how we were. She immediately launched into a rant about genetic testing and IVF with gender selection. She'd clearly been researching, quoting statistics, clinic names, everything. Jack listened for maybe 2 minutes before cutting her off and telling her she had lost her mind. Alina snapped back instantly, saying the real insanity was letting his father's family name die out, accusing Jack of failing his duty as the only son, and calling us selfish for not using modern science. To have a boy, Jack ended the call without another word and stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. I tried to stay focused on preparing for Rose, washing her tiny clothes, building the crib, organizing the nursery, but Alina's words kept repeating in my head. The idea that my daughters were less valuable than the sons we never had made me sick. I'd be folding onesies and suddenly remember her calling our girls redundancy, or tightening screws on the crib and hear her saying, "Real grandchild." Like Lucy wasn't real. Like Rose wouldn't be either. Jack found me crying in the nursery more than once. He'd just hold me, not speaking, because what was there left to say? His mother had already declared what she thought about our family one afternoon. Helen called while I was sorting baby blankets. She sounded furious. Alina had been talking at their church, telling people I refused to try for a boy, that I was deliberately ending their family line, that I had something against male children. Helen said she'd already started correcting everyone, that she wouldn't let Alina twist the story to make herself the victim. I thanked her, hung up, and felt even worse. Now Alina wasn't just rejecting our daughters, she was publicly attacking us 2 days later. My sister Amy showed up with Chinese takeout and found me crying in the nursery again. She didn't ask anything, just hugged me. She said Alina was finally showing who she truly was, and that it was better we saw it now than after Rose was born. Amy reminded me that Lucy was still young enough to forget, and that we could protect both girls from Alina's cruelty. We ate lo mein sitting on the nursery floor, surrounded by pink blankets, stuffed animals, and half-built furniture. Amy made me laugh by offering increasingly absurd ideas on how to mess with Alina 2 weeks after the shower. Jack got an email from his mother, a long one with the subject line, "Moving forward." My blood pressure rose with every sentence. Alina laid out her reasonable expectations for us to try for a boy within 2 years of Rose's birth. She included statistics about gender disappointment, links to 3 clinics offering gender selection, complete with pricing, medical terms, timelines, even a suggested schedule to begin when Rose turned 18 months. The whole thing was formatted like a corporate proposal, bullet points and action items. Jack stared at the screen for a long time before typing his reply. His message was short but devastating. He told her obsession with male grandchildren was disturbing and sexist, that she herself was a daughter, that her own mother had 3 girls. He asked her directly if she thought her mother saw her as worthless. Jack wrote that our family was complete with 2 daughters, that we weren't having more children just to satisfy Alina's obsession with a legacy, and that she needed to ask herself why she valued boys over girls. He hit send before I finished reading and closed his laptop. Her response came an hour later, not to Jack, but through Sebastian. She called him crying, and then Sebastian called Jack, asking what he'd said to hurt her. Jack stayed firm. He told his father that Alina owed us the apology, not the other way around, and that disappointment didn't excuse cruelty. When the call ended, Jack looked drained, like confronting his parents had taken everything out of him. 3 weeks passed before my next appointment, and I spent most of it trying not to think about Alina's email or the will threat. But at the checkup, my nurse took my blood pressure twice and brought in the doctor, who looked worried. My numbers were too high. When she asked about stress, I finally broke down and told her everything: the shower, the email, the way Alina rejected both my daughters. She explained that this kind of stress could affect the pregnancy and told me to monitor my blood pressure at home. I left scared and furious, knowing Alina's behavior was physically impacting me. 2 days later, Helen invited us to a family meeting and made it clear Alina wasn't invited. The house was full when we arrived. Helen explained why she'd called everyone together, and then people started sharing their own stories. I learned Alina had been controlling and critical for years, of weddings, parenting choices, even college majors. Then Jack's cousin mentioned something that stunned the room. Alina had done the same thing years ago when his sister had 3 daughters. She'd made comments about wasted pregnancies and pushed them to try for a boy. Eventually, that side of the family cut contact with her for 2 years. I watched Jack's face go pale as he realized this wasn't new behavior, it was a pattern. Helen followed him outside when he stepped out to breathe. When they returned, Jack looked shaken but more resolved than he had in weeks. He thanked everyone for being honest and said it made one thing clear: keeping our daughters away from his mother wasn't extreme. It was necessary. We drove home quietly, both of us processing everything we'd learned about 3 weeks before my due date. I was in the nursery when the doorbell rang. Jack answered, and I heard Alina's cheerful voice like nothing had happened. I stayed in the living room, hand on my belly, watching her hand Jack a gift bag covered in blue ribbons. Jack looked inside, confused at first, then furious. She'd brought a book about raising boys and a note about planning our next pregnancy, including info on gender selection clinics and an offer to help pay. She said it wasn't too early to start preparing for a future grandson. Jack quietly handed the bag back and told her she wasn't welcome until she could love all her grandchildren equally, not just imaginary boys. Alina went red, called us ungrateful, and stormed off shouting that we'd regret it. After he shut the door, Jack leaned against it, shaking. I went to him and we held on to each other for a long time. That night, after Lucy was asleep, we finally broke down. Jack cried harder than I'd ever seen, saying it felt like losing a parent, realizing he'd never really known who his mother truly was. We talked in the dark about protecting Lucy and Rose from ever feeling unwanted. The next morning, Lucy pulled out her big sister dress and wore it proudly, even though it didn't fit quite right anymore. She spent the day practicing with her dolls, telling Rose through my belly how excited she was to be a sister. Watching her made Alina's rejection sting even more. Lucy deserved a grandmother who loved her without conditions. I took pictures of her in that dress, wanting to remember her joy before she was old enough to understand all this. The following afternoon, my grandmother Caroline called, furious. She'd run into Alina at the grocery store. Alina had tried convincing her to talk us into trying for a boy after Rose was born. Caroline told her off, reminding her that she'd raised 3 daughters and never once thought they weren't enough. She warned me Alina might approach other relatives, but also told me to focus on my health and ignore the nonsense. 2 days later, Helen called with an update. Several family members had uninvited Alina from upcoming events. People were disturbed by her behavior after hearing everything at the gathering. Alina was telling everyone we'd turned the family against her, but most didn't believe it. They'd seen her walk out over a pink cake and call our daughter redundancy. That truth was impossible for her to rewrite. Helen told us that even some of Eleanor's church friends were pulling away after hearing about the gender selection gift. Prudence apparently told the church group that Alina had crossed a major line. It felt like a relief that people finally understood the truth and Alina couldn't twist the story anymore. That evening, Sebastian called Jack. Jack put it on speaker so I could listen. Sebastian sounded tired and admitted he'd always known Alina had strong opinions about gender, but he'd convinced himself she'd soften once the grandkids were here. He said he'd been wrong to downplay it, wrong to keep asking Jack to avoid conflict, and wrong to believe love would fix her obsession with having a grandson. He'd tried talking to her, but she refused to listen to anyone. He apologized for not stepping in sooner. When Jack asked why he had stayed with someone who thought like this, Sebastian went quiet before saying he'd been questioning that himself. They talked for almost an hour. When the call ended, Jack looked drained but lighter, like a weight had shifted 3 days before my due date. I woke up at 2 a.m. with contractions that didn't feel like the usual practice ones. These were strong and steady. Jack was instantly awake, timing them on his phone. Within 15 minutes, we knew this was real labor. He called my mom and then his dad. Sebastian asked if they should come to the hospital, but Jack told him gently that Alina couldn't be there right now. My mom arrived quickly to stay with Lucy, and we drove to the hospital. Every bump hurt, even though it was a short drive. At 3:15 a.m. we checked in. I was already 6 centimeters. The nurses got me settled, hooked up the monitors, and Jack stayed right beside me through every contraction. Rose was born at 6:47 a.m., after 4 intense hours that felt much longer. She weighed 7 pounds 2 oz with a head full of dark hair just like Lucy had. The moment they placed her on my chest, she cried, and Jack cried too, kissing my forehead and staring at her like he couldn't believe she was real. My mom came within a couple hours, then Caroline with flowers, then Amy taking pictures, and finally Helen, who kept saying how beautiful Rose was. They passed her around, filling the room with so much love that I barely noticed I was still exhausted. Jack sent photos to everyone, but of course, nothing from Alina. Not even a text. Lucy arrived that afternoon wearing her big sister dress from the shower. She climbed onto my bed carefully, nervous but excited, and I helped her hold Rose. She touched Rose's tiny hand and whispered promises about sharing toys and always being sisters. Then she sang a little song she'd made up, and Jack filmed the whole thing with tears in his eyes. Lucy kissed Rose's forehead and said she would protect her forever. I cried again. The next 2 days were a blur of visitors, flowers, and gifts from friends, coworkers, and family. Pink balloons filled the room. Cards stacked on every surface. Stuffed animals everywhere, but from Alina, nothing. No congratulations, no flowers, no message at all. On the second day in the hospital, Sebastian texted congratulations and said Rose was beautiful. But Jack noticed the photo Sebastian sent was the same one he had posted online the day she was born. He hadn't come to the hospital, hadn't met Rose, just pulled the picture from social media. Jack didn't mention it, but I saw how much it hurt him. We took Rose home 3 days after her birth and spent the next couple of days in a blur of feedings, diapers, and helping Lucy adjust. She kept bringing Rose stuffed animals and insisting on helping with everything. We were both barely sleeping when the doorbell rang on our 3rd day home. Jack returned with a large envelope from a law firm, and my stomach sank immediately. Inside was a formal notice from Alina's lawyer. She had changed her will. Lucy and Rose were removed completely, and everything was now going to Jack's cousin's sons, the proper heirs who could carry on the family name. Seeing our daughters' names listed under removed beneficiaries made Jack go pale. He called Alina right away. She answered, sounding almost proud of herself. She said her estate should go to real heirs, and that if we ever had a son later, she'd reconsider. Jack's voice cracked as he told her she was punishing 2 innocent little girls for being born female. When she kept talking about legacy, he cut her off and told her she was dead to us. Then he hung up and threw his phone across the room. I brought Rose into the living room and sat with him in silence. Lucy was asleep, and for a long time the only sound was the baby breathing softly. That night, after the girls went to bed, we sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee and talked it through. I told Jack I didn't care about her money at all. I just cared about protecting Lucy and Rose from someone who saw them as disappointments. Jack agreed instantly. He said no amount of inheritance was worth letting his mother poison our daughter's sense of worth. We decided that unless Alina made a true apology and changed, she wouldn't be part of our lives. The next day, Amy came over and found me crying while Rose slept in my arms. I told her about the certified letter and the phone call, and she turned bright red with anger. She kept saying she wanted to march to Alina's house and tell her off. I begged her not to. Alina wasn't worth the energy. Amy sat beside me and held me while I cried, saying someday Alina would regret everything she'd lost. But by then we'd have moved forward without her.